Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk about all the coup d'etats that have been taking place recently across many countries in Africa, especially in Francophone Africa. Recently we had Gabon, before that we had Niger, we had Burkina Faso, Guinea, Conakry, Mali. And all of these coup d'etats, when they take place, you see this celebration from the people, the euphoria, from the people, because they are happy that a leader that was not delivering what they wanted has been deposed and the military has taken over. And for me, I am sympathetic to most of those people, because most of the leaders, most of the times, they work for their interest, and some of them are stooges for foreign governments, and they don't work for the interest of the people. And so, frankly, I don't pity them when they are deposed. But I want to talk about the issue of the celebration of the people. And why I feel that most of these coups are not really going to change anything, because of certain fundamental aspects. Number one reason is the lack of patriotism from most of these leaders. Most of these leaders come in place, like these military leaders. Sometimes they start with good intentions, but when they get there, of course, when a coup happens, there's a lot of pressure on the military leaders from the regional bodies, like in the case of ECOWAS, CEMAC, and the international community, the UN, the international partners, the US, the World Bank, and so on. And they tell most of these military governments that they need to transition into a civilian government. And those transitions most of the time have to take place between 1 year and sometimes 3 years, right? Which sometimes the junta, propose to. And what happens? Most of the time when these people get in power and they're like, oh, this is a transition. What if I'm not able to transition from a military leader and then eventually, step down from the military and become a civilian ruler? When they have a transition period from 1 year or 3 years, what they do is, within that period, rather than really working to establish true systems that work for the country, they rather work for their self-interest, their personal interest. They're like, oh, I'm just going to be here 3 years. Those other people that were here for 10, 15 years, they have stolen and amassed enough for themselves and their families. Why am I going to spend my time trying to deliver to the people when I don't even have enough time? And what ends up happening is, most of these people, rather than working for the people, they start, working for themselves. They work for themselves, their families, and their tribal people. Means that they're putting their tribal people in positions, trying to give everybody something. And some do it so that even when they leave power, some of these people, if they manage to stay in the subsequent governments, at least they might be getting something from them. And so that lack of true patriotism, that lack of a true will for change for the people, it now derails most of these military governments and most of these military leaders. And in the end, the things sometimes do get worse, because these things come with sanctions. All right? And a true leader has to do the right thing before some of these sanctions are lifted, in terms of what is being demanded by regional and international bodies. Sometimes loans are suspended and so many things, aid and so on. Aid, actually, that is useless, but talking about, things that they need to be able to develop the economy. And so it affects their ability. So most of the times, rather than trying to do the right thing, most of these guys, they just steal, take their own share, work for themselves and not for the people, work for their families and their tribes, and that is a reason why most of these coups, their tribes and their associates, work for their tribes and their associates, and why these coups might fail. Number two aspect is corruption. Most of these countries, when the military leaders take over, you have a civil service that's existing in a country. These guys have been in the military 20 years, 10 years. They are government workers. They have always been there, and they know how to game the system. And so when a military government comes into place and they do not set the record straight, they do not set in place systems that eliminate any thought. They do not set very serious consequences for people that steal or that embezzle state funds, then nothing really changes. In fact, the truth is that most of those people that have been in the system, they have an understanding of the system. When you come, you have to first of all rely on them. Like, how do you do this? How do you do that? And if you are not careful, the bad habits that they are already used to under previous governments, they might push it into you. Like, man, you can get 20% from this money that you're giving these contractors. Don't let that money go like that. You can get 10% here. You can get 30% there. And at the end of the day, if these people become corrupt too, that virus, touches them, then they just start behaving like the government that was there before. And unfortunately, nothing changes. So corruption is something that they have to eradicate if they want to be able to make any meaningful changes. They have to ensure that contracts that are awarded to the right people, and these contracts are delivered to perfection in terms of the standards and everything that was expected of them. Those that don't do that, there should be consequences. Heads need to roll. And if this does not happen, trust me, nothing is going to change. The next thing is lack of true sovereignty. The third aspect. Now, most of these countries, take the case of Mali, take the case of Niger. Now, these two countries have been fighting insurgency, right? And because they lack the means to be able to fight the insurgents, such as ISIL and others, they have been relying on the international community, such as the US and the French. And so the Malians told the French to leave and their military to leave, right? Because, of course, France is not there just for the interest of those people. They are there also for their own interests. But when you are telling people to leave, you should be able to fill in the gap in terms of defense spending. Well, hopefully they are relying on Russia and China on that aspect, but it's only so far that they can go. You should be able to be truly sovereign, be able to, develop stuff for yourself, so that no matter what happens, at least you can be able to take care of you and yours in your country. The next aspect of lack of sovereignty, is the ability for them to control their monetary policy and fiscal policy. Most of these French African countries, they are in the franc zone, and their money is controlled and printed in France. The money is printed by France, and France controls their monetary policy. Most of their reserves from goods that they sell, their foreign exchange, about 50% is kept in the French treasury, which uses it for the benefit of its French citizens. And so you see that there's lack of true sovereignty in that. How can you have a free economy? How can you have a truly make your economy great when you don't have autonomy over your economy, autonomy over your money? It becomes so difficult, and they can sabotage you in so many ways that cannot even be said. So they need to be able to have their own money. Even if they're having money with a group of countries, it should be a group of independent countries that have decided to do so. And this is solely run by these countries, not by an external country. That's where you see that the colonialism is not yet over. These countries are not yet sovereign. And so you can chase the French military, but yet they are waiting for you. They have your money in your bank account. When you need money for your economy and you need more money printed, who do you go to? You still go to them. And they can sabotage you and delay. And all of this affects your economy. So, if you cannot control monetary supply and restrict it as you want, come on. What economy are you running? You now see that you have a big problem. So, it is important that they have the sovereignty. And so, this is one aspect that might actually sabotage them. And they might not be able to deliver despite good intentions, if some do have that. The next aspect is concentration of power. Now, I know I've talked about a lack of patriotism and corruption. This concentration of power is another big issue, because most of the time these military leaderships, they tend to become dictatorships, and they want to control every aspect. This ministry, you have a country with 10, 12, 15 regions, and you just want to sit in one ministry and run the whole country without giving the local people a say in how to run their own affairs. Now it becomes very tricky, because eventually you are not able to touch everyone equally, and then you start getting grumblings. And then the people that are given the power to manage these resources, it now, pushes them into corrupt practices, because the power is concentrated. The people at the base, at the local levels, they know what their problems are, and they can elect their own leaders. But if you keep appointing people, you have appointed this one, appointed that one, appointed, it's like you can appoint your stooges and they report to you. And now what the people actually need is not what is given to them. Resources are allocated to where they are not needed, and where they are truly needed, they are not allocated. Because sometimes it's not even that the funds are stolen. Instead of building a road that when you calculate, you see that it's going to touch 50% of the population, you rather go and put it in your village where it's not going to serve even 5% of the population. And so these are where you see the resource allocation. Due to power concentration, it affects the way these things can be done in the right way. So people really need to have true local power, in that they can develop their own things, and to be able to develop roads. And now the central government is supposed to support these people. And when you're supporting them, you have to ensure that they are doing the right thing, right? And this is holding them accountable by giving them goals that they have to meet with that budget from the central government. In this way, everybody, if people don't deliver, it means their local leaders are not delivering. And also there should be laws in place that bring consequences for such people, because it's still state money. But if that is not done and power is concentrated, rest assured, military or non-military rule, nothing might change. And tomorrow, other coup d'etats will follow with the same story. The next one, very important aspect, is failed education systems in most of these countries. Back in the colonial times, right now we have a lot of grammar education, or what we call theoretical training of people. People go and learn theory, and come back and start teaching their theory to the next set. In the past, most of this theoretical education was to groom people who work in, administrative positions, such as the judges, such as ministries, such as clerks, such as, government representatives, delegates, teachers, and all of that. But right now, the population of most of these countries have grown, and you already have so many people in these positions. And training so many people, like even in the banking system and so on, you already have a lot of people. A lot of people are being trained for that. And so there are not so many opportunities in those sectors, right, that can really serve the majority of the population. So in that case, what happens? A lot of people are getting out, especially now. You have most of these countries with youthful population. Under 25, you have about 60% of the country. And most of them are jobless. You have them riding bikes and doing other menial things to try to survive that are not skill-based and are adding nothing to the economy and do not create any multiplier effect. And it's because of they have been trained not to be able to create anything for themselves. They have been trained, groomed the way the colonialists groomed people to come and work in white-collar jobs in the government. And so many of these people, they just believe that a government job is what saves them, because they say, oh, if the government job, I'll have security, at least, which that is not how a true country grows. So the educational system is a mess. That educational system has to be revamped in these countries, so that most people are being trained to be technical and to be able to be independent. And people that can be independent, that have an entrepreneurial mindset, can create opportunities for others. Even if you don't create for others, you can create for yourself. You do not wait for the government. If you're a welder, you're an auto technician, you're an engineer that can build things and make things, you are a developer, you are, all this stuff that really gives you hands-on stuff. You are a fashion designer, interior designer, engineer that works in the food sector or in construction. You can create opportunities for yourself without relying on the government. But so long as this is not done, So long as the educational remains the same and it is churning out people expecting white-collar jobs from the government, trust me, the system has already failed. The country has to be able to train the people to match its needs. Don't just copy an educational system because this is what you were told 60, 70, 80 years ago. You have to do what now works. Like if we want to generate productivity, if we want to be able to produce and export like the Chinese do, like the Koreans do, what do we have to do? You have to first of all train people to be able to build. Train people you have to teach them. You can bring the people that know to come and teach your people. You can buy the machines to come and train your people how to do it. You bring contracts, they have to train your people and give them the know-how. I know there are a lot of contracts where they stipulate that, oh, we are going to train the people. At the end of the day, they don't do it. And even the maintenance of that project becomes difficult. You have to go back to the people who did it. That's not a sustainable way. Those are resources being wasted. Resources that could be put elsewhere to develop the economy. And so if there's no overhaul of the educational system, if there's no change in the mindset of the people about creating a new system where people can be creators of opportunities rather than dependent on the government and, a limited private sector, then it's just going to be a failure. So I think those are the top reasons why these coups, despite their good intentions, might fail. But I know some don't have good intentions. Some just want power because they have seen other people do it in the past. But let's hope, that they all have good intentions. But those good intentions are not enough. They have to actually do serious work. And you know what it means to change a bad system. It is serious work. It is no joke. You have to be radical in order to change that. Are they ready to be radical? Are they ready to do what it takes? Are they ready to be patriotic? Are they ready, to eliminate corruption? Are they ready to give people the right education? Are they ready for true sovereignty? These are the right things that will develop those countries. And I hope that me being a naysayer, I'm not trying to be a naysayer actually. I'm just saying what is there. But if they want to change things, I think they need to look at some of these aspects. Please drop a comment below of, the things that you think might hamper these people from actually succeeding, and what you think they can do to make it. I will talk in another video what most countries can do. Not only coup-prone countries, but all our African countries that are still struggling, and there's disparity in wealth in how they can actually generate more opportunities for the people going forward. Thank you, and see you in the next video. Ciao.